Hello again, and it's Tag Trends. Do you think African can manage his own affairs, as Dr. Kwame Nkrumah said? Let's listen to this.
I ask each of us in this room, are you African? Do you see yourself as part of the global Pan-African revolution? How many in this room are African? Raise your hand. Everybody's hand should be up. Boom. There it is. And are you part of the global Pan-African revolution? And sometimes we're afraid of this term revolution, but it means change, means total transformation. And that's what we want, right? Do we want total transformation in Ghana? Is Ghana what we want it to be? No. These are important questions that we must ask ourselves daily and weekly. And we must challenge our classmates, our colleagues, our friends, our mothers, very respectfully though, to make sure that they also understand that their very identity is tied to Africa's liberation. If we are African, we recognize the need to unify and liberate ourselves from mental slavery, as Bob Marley says, and political, social, economic and economic slavery, as we're witnessing today. And we know economic slavery. When you have oil and you only control 13% of it, that doesn't sound like freedom to me. Recently, we had a 3-day protest in Ghana. And let me just go back to the oil. If we had at least 50% of the profits from the oil that was discovered recently, where would Ghana be development-wise? How would the education be in SHS? Would we have people who have more access to income, and would our CD be stronger? What is our CD today? I don't even know. You 10 CDs, you will go and buy 10 CDs a year ago and love your life and be chopping some nice wache today. Can you even get one small cup of wache for 10 CDs? Maybe you can, but that's all you can eat. And how many people eat one meal a day in Ghana? And how many people don't have access to protein in Ghana? And would that be different if we controlled, for example, our gold and our bauxite, and we controlled our oil? I'm just asking a question. Recently, we had a 3-day protest in Ghana. And in Burkina Faso, there's uprisings. In Senegal, there have been protests against the current government. What do these struggles have in common? Do we hear, for example, in Ghana, how our struggles are connected to the larger African world, or were the protesters raising Ghana-specific issues? I heard people talking about the Tema motorway, which is very dangerous and you can die in the Tema motorway. I heard people talking about healthcare. I heard people talking about not being able to survive, and all of those things are valid. But are those things also happening in Togo? Are they also happening in Senegal? Are they also happening in Zambia, right? How do we draw linkages between our struggles in Ghana and the struggles of African people globally? Are they also happening in Brazil? Are they also happening in the US? Are they also happening in Colombia? Wherever African people are, and really wherever humanity is, these struggles are happening. And we know why. Rather than connecting the community or national specific issues to the larger Pan-African world and that of global capitalism, who is the real fundamental issue, we tend to deal with community-based issues, national issues, and we have the same response and reaction to tragedy every time it happens. So if we continue in this pattern, your children will be having 3-day marches at the Flagstaff House. We hope they won't be brutalized by the police, but that also happened. And they'll be having the same problems. We must unify so that your children and your children's children can live a dignified life. I just want to say this quickly because I have about 5 minutes, but I'm almost through. In Senegal, there was a group of organizers that brought together Pan-African organizations. They had a meeting in Gorée Island in 2018, and they had a meeting at Dakar in 2020, and they developed a network called Afrique, which was basically formed to contribute to building the Pan-African movement. These are the kinds of movements that we as African people globally need to be thinking through and need to be embracing. If you want to learn more about this, you can look in our Global Africa journal. And by the way, it's open access, so just Google Global Africa and you can see everything. And the articles are in French, and they're in English and Swahili and some in Arabic. So African identity is a political project and part of the collective struggle against the oppression and repression of global African, against global capitalism, is ultimately, not identifying as African people, not having a collective African identity, is stalling our struggle against global capitalism and for Pan-Africanism. We must take heed of this. On 6 March, Kwame Nkrumah reminded us at Ghana's independence, 1957, that Ghana's independence is meaningless without the total liberation of the entire continent. This call by Nkrumah has never been needed more than it is needed in the 21st century. And I would like to change that to say that my development, my independence, my education, my stomach being full is meaningless unless every African person has access to food, to shelter, to education, to living in a comfortable place, to running water, to electricity, and to peace. If you don't have these things, it's violence against you. Not having access to electricity in 2021 is a violent act that you are receiving because of global capitalism.
100 meters over here, and it presents the ideas of W.E.B. Du Bois, Kwame Nkrumah, and others in a very straightforward way. I spent about an hour there, and I became a Pan-African. I just want to add one other thing, and thank you for indulging my comment. Well, I'll be calling that. Is there's an effort underway to arrive at a peaceful end to the terrorism and warfare that's plaguing the countries north of Ghana. And there's a very real possibility that in the near future there could be an outcome which might lead to an option for a united Africa, meaning one country, not even necessarily a federation of different countries, but one united Africa. And that could be possibly something that comes out of those discussions in the countries north of here. I happen to have spent 19 months in Mali recently, and am aware that this is a real possibility. So let's keep hope alive and keep optimistic, and thank you all again.
The previous one that the EU replaced was to decolonize Africa. And our African leaders put together their thoughts, their leadership, their resources, and in 10 years, almost all of Africa, with the exception of Rhodesia and South Africa, were liberated. So it means that when the African puts his mind to something, he can achieve it. Development is a very complex endeavor. So when we look around us and we look at the problems that we see, the poverty and the diseases and everything else, it makes us wonder that what is going wrong. But what I can also say is that history has a very long arc. When you are managing something in the now and then, it's different from when you take it over 50 years or 100 years or even 1,000 years. Now, what is left for us now is not to look for leaders, especially we the young people. We have to train ourselves to be leaders. And secondly, we have to demand accountability. I am moving away from philosopher kings to societies of accountability, because we are human beings after all, so we are prone to mistakes. So the next thing to ask is, are we capable of having the metal to hold our leaders to account so that we can be capable of leading ourselves to prosperity? And in 10 years, almost all of Africa, with the exception of Rhodesia and South Africa, graduated. So it means that when the African puts his mind to something, he can achieve it. Development is a very complex endeavor. So when we look around us and we look at the problems that we see, the poverty and the diseases and everything else, it makes us wonder that what is going wrong. But what I can also say is that history has a very long arc. When you are managing something in the now and then, it's different from when you take it over 50 years or 100 years or even 1,000 years. Now, what is left for us now is not to look for leaders, especially we the young people. We have to train ourselves to be leaders. And secondly, we have to demand accountability. I am moving away from philosopher kings to societies of accountability, because we are human beings after all, so we are prone to mistakes. So the next thing to ask is, are we capable of having the metal to hold our leaders to account so that we can be capable of leading ourselves to prosperity?
Thank you. So that was going to be our last set of questions. We want to give each of you an opportunity for any closing remarks or addressing any of the comments or questions that you said on the leadership issue.